Hello, Yudhika. It's so
Uh,
nice to be talking to you today.
It is lovely to be here.
I guess we have to preface this call with the fact that we actually do know each other and that we are school mums.
Bonded over possum magic.
Well, I think we should share that story. I think the two of us met because our kids go to the same school, and we met at a book week event where it was actually, I think, told to the parents like you can volunteer to read a book in your language, and I think we both independently were being quite cheeky / rude to the school and said, does Australian count as a different language? And the school was like, yes, please come along and bring a book that you would like to read. And so the two Australian mums turn up and get put together, and we had both brought the same book, which is Possum Magic by Mem Fox. So
great book.
I know, and the Australians will appreciate that because it's pretty much like a rite of passage.
Yeah, for childhood, isn't it?
100%. And I think for those of you who haven't read it, it is definitely one to put on the book list.
Book.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. But actually, wasn't it funny though? Because there was one of those kids like, oh, I'm Australian. And we were like, have you read this book? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Have you ever lived in Australia? No. I was like, wow. Isn't that interesting though? Just missing out on some of those real cultural things like that.
Exactly. But I also love the way, like, he wasn't, I can't remember if it was a boy or girl, but wasn't born in Australia, living somewhere else, but totally identifies as Australian.
100%. And had quite an Australian accent for an international kid as well.
Yeah,
it was a little boy. Yeah. Okay, we've totally digressed, and I'm not keeping to my way. I'm supposed to do this in this very serious and sensible podcast that I host.
Yes.
Can you please tell me?
Let's bring on the matters that count.
Very much so. Can you please tell me who you are, where you are from, and where you are based now?
Okay, so my name's Yudhika, and originally from South Africa. We moved to Australia when I was about 5 years old, and am, for all sakes and purposes, Australian. So like I said, I met you at that book reading, and you introduced me, and it was actually the first time I had heard the phrase trailing spouse. And I must admit, when you said, oh, because we were talking about working in Singapore and me with the visa that I'm on, I can't. And you're in a similar situation, but you were telling me about starting up your own business. And that's basically the only way we can do it here. And you were telling me about this lovely, lovely thing that you've started called the trailing spouse. And I admit, when you first told me, I was like, oh, that's a weird name, but all right. And did not realize until I kind of looked into it that it's not just a weird name. It's actually terminology for who we are.
Which, might I add, is quite triggering for a lot of people. There's
I just found it a bit old-fashioned, but I didn't find it triggering. I was a bit like, oh, that's a bit of a weird way to, but okay.
Yeah, it's, I promise you, quite triggering for some people. I'm not trailing. I'm like, okay.
And I can see how it's a really old term where the newer aged, I don't know, supportive spouses or whatever they want to be.
You know what? I wonder if it's the word spouse. I find the word spouse oldie, worldy, and weird.
It's both. Both of them are a bit like, I wouldn't call myself either of those. I'm not offended by it, but I just kind of find it a bit like, oh, that's an odd one. And then, you kind of went, and meeting a lot of the people who have joined and are in similar situations, it's been lovely just hearing everyone's different story and kind of, I mean, no one's got the same one apart from the fact that we're all stuck on the same boat of, you know, we're in Singapore now, being stuck on that DP boat. But everyone's got such a different story and such interesting ways of how they're getting through it.
100%. Well, let's back it up. Talk me through how you guys have ended up here. What did life look like before? What does life look like here? Sort of talk me through career-wise and location-wise and things.
So career-wise, when I first met my husband, I was a musculoskeletal therapist. And at that point, I had kind of gone, oh, I want that. That's a bit more of it's kind of like a physio or an osteopath. And I kind of went, I think I want more of a 9 to 5. And I had started getting into the non-for-profits and working in a lovely company. It's a lovely organization in Melbourne in the non-for-profit area, and loving it. And then fell pregnant with my first one. And when I had him, so while still on maternity leave, he was about 6 or 7 months, we did our first move from Melbourne overseas, and we moved to Geneva for 2.5 years. And in Geneva, it wasn't so much that I was on any visa that I couldn't work on or anything like that. It was, I just, like, to get a job there is so hard. And on top of the fact that I don't speak English, I, didn't have some huge humanitarian thing behind me to work like for the UN or some company like that, some organization
Just to
like
clarify,
that.
you do speak English, you just don't speak French.
Yes. What did I say? Did I say English?
I don't speak English. We're doing a very good job. We're doing a fabulous job.
I speak Australian.
Yeah, true. Sorry. My bad.
So I couldn't find work there, but I was actually quite happy not to, because I had this new baby and I was kind of loving life as just being a stay-at-home mum without really kind of realizing what, if I had been in Melbourne, I probably would have gone back to work within, 9 months, a year, at least part-time or something. I would have been back in the game without really realizing that I wasn't in the game, and that was going to show on a resume as such. So after 2.5 years, we came back to Melbourne, and I was like, that's cool. I'll set up my little baby and we'll do all that and, get a house and all of that. So probably chillaxed for another 6 months or so, and then started looking for work, and did not find anything for a year. I kind of feel that it might have been a bit of a, oh, look, she's taken 2.5 years off. And I was quite honest on my resume and kind of went, we moved overseas. I'm a mum of a young boy, and kind of used that to my advantage or thought I had, in describing what I did as an expat mum in Geneva, and, setting up the English-speaking mums groups and setting up WhatsApp groups to get mums together and to try to do things, and setting up, that kind of thing. Because I had set up a WhatsApp group of just English-speaking mums, and we slowly just, everyone we met, we included, and it was like a really beautiful community of, hey guys, this is happening in this area of Geneva or whatnot. And I think when I left Geneva, it had like 99 members in there all kind of chatting, and we had to start kicking people out because at that point WhatsApp had a limit on group numbers. And so I thought, okay, I'll just jazz that up a little bit and make it sound very, hireable.
Community management, event management,
all of that. I couldn't find work for ages. And then when I landed this amazing job, I landed another job in a non-for-profit, really lovely job. And the day that I started my job was the day that basically COVID hit Melbourne, and everyone was sent home to work from home, and everything was shut down. And so that would have been in March of that year. And so within like a month or so of this full-time job that I had, they kind of contacted me, and because I was community fundraiser, and there wasn't much of a community to fundraise at that point. So it was kind of like, we're going to have to cut you back to 3 days. And then it was like, and we're now making you redundant. So it was lovely while it lasted. And then to get another job after that was again a little bit tricky. And I got a really awful job. And then fell pregnant with my second. And he was just over a year old when we moved to Singapore. And kind of landed in Singapore. And sorry, just before we came to Singapore, I had started up my musculoskeletal therapy again, and started, which was perfect because it meant working in school hours and doing my own times. And finally, that side of life, which I had run away from when I had swapped into non-for-profits, was coming back into play. And it was working out really lovely. And then we've come to Singapore, and I was like, sweet, I will bring my table here and I will set it up again. And I was all planned for it. And weirdly enough, coming to Singapore, we were under the impression that I could work. Nobody had actually sat us down and gone, DP can't work. And even after speaking to like my husband's HR manager and kind of going, oh, what am I going to do in Singapore? So when I landed here, I found out this information from a mum at my son's school. Just kind of chatting to her, going, this is what I'm going to do. And she kind of went, you do realize you can't work on a DP here? And I was like, what? And I was like, I'd kind of heard that, but since landing in Singapore, I'd kind of heard that, but I thought I could. And it was such a bizarre kind of place to be in. So not working here has been a little bit more of a hit in the gut compared to Geneva, where it was more like, I can understand it because I don't speak French and I can understand that side of things. And so being here now, I mean, I've still enjoyed it here because I've still got my little one that, spending time with him and things like that. But now he's at preschool and the older one's at school and I'm kind of here going, oh, okay, what do I do now? And also, I guess maybe being more in a headspace ready to work compared to where I was the last time I was a trailing spouse as such. So that's kind of been our journey, or my journey, and where I'm at now, and kind of going, oh, shall I try to work remotely or what can I do? And in the end, I've kind of ended up going, I'm going to go back to studying. So doing an online course through Australia, and a course that I've always been very interested in and would be a career path I'd want to go down to. So doing another change of career paths, but not too sure where that's going to go in terms of, if I'm a graduate from Australia, how do I bring that here? Or will the DP laws change here? Because they seem to change quite often. All of that. So it's an interesting spot to be. But yeah, and it kind of suits our lifestyle because work here for my husband, like work lifestyle, I find here is very much weighted towards work rather than family life balance. So in that way, it's probably good that I'm open and available and can kind of do things with kids. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I have this absolute frustration at a very deep and visceral level when I hear stories like that, as far as what a poor job HR can do.
Yeah.
As far as you getting on a plane with completely unrealistic expectations of what's going to happen when you land.
Yeah.
And look, I'm sure people will be like, what's wrong with her? Why didn't she actually look this up? Or why do you think? But if that's never been flagged, you just assume that, because I'm pretty sure I shouldn't even say what happens with work visas and things in Australia. I've got no idea. But I quite often, that as part of a package, when someone moves somewhere, their spouse can work. Like that does happen in a lot of places. As I'm now finding with the podcast and with the trailing spouse, so I'm finding that it is changing around the world, that it is a lot tighter in a lot of places. But to be honest, and I'm just saying, I'm thinking like, oh God, how did you not look that up? I didn't. I had some friends.
You know why I didn't look it up though? Because like you said, nobody flagged it with me. So in my head, I just assumed, cool, when I get there, I can do a little side job, and, or even just a little bit of a side hustle or whatnot, which I think that's a bit of an off topic. But I think, again, depending on where you are and what country you're in and how it all works, certain things are allowed and certain things are not allowed. So for me, I thought something would be workable. And easy workable. But and I think the way, like speaking to my husband's HR, the way they kind of worded it was similar, that you can just start your own business, or you can just do this, or you can just do that, without going the finer detail. It's not just you start your own business here, which you can do in Australia. You can just start your own business, which is what I had done to set up my MST. So I figured I'd be able to do the same thing here. But it's not that. There's a lot of little catches on that start your own business here at the moment. And then I hear lots of people speaking rumors about, oh, they're going to change that, so it's not as hard anymore. And it's like, oh, well, then do I wait for that, or do I start one now and hope for the best, or do I start one now and then dissolve it when it gets to all those little catches, and then start another one when the catches are gone, or like how? And it's just like, oh, that's such a pain. I came here thinking, oh yeah, cool, I'll just do my thing.
Well, I'm empathetic to the headspace that you're in, because it's a frustration. I think that this, quite often when I'm asking people for like their advice and things that they wish they'd known, they sort of give two bits. So one is that a lot of them have actually said, oh, I wish I'd done a bit more research, which if I retrospectively said that, that would probably be advice that I would give people as well.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like, quite often now that we live here, whenever friends have got people moving here, they'll put them in touch.
Yeah.
And so I red flag a whole lot of things, but if you didn't have that prior to, so I think that had happened to me. I'd been put in touch with a friend's friend who'd said, just a heads up, like this is what it's sort of like. But in the time that we've been here, those rules have changed multiple times as well.
Exactly.
So yeah. But the second bit of advice that people give, though, that I feel like you're getting there, is that, okay, you got to flip it on its head and be like, okay, how do I make the absolute best of my time here, and the absolute privilege and freedom and flexibility that comes with an open sort of option to doing things. But it's been interesting over the time that we've known each other, and it's almost like, oh my God, I feel like it's almost watching someone go through like the grieving process, you know, when it's like all of the emotions, like, you know, when it is, and you catch people on a certain day and it's like it's a good day, I'm enrolling in this course and yes, I'm on. And then it's like a low day and you're like, what am I doing? I hate it here. And
Surprisingly, though, I have to admit, being in Geneva, our first little move, and look, this might be, it's much more my personality than everything. Anything I enter into, I probably don't do enough research and enter it into a, yoo-hoo, this is going to be a great experience. And I can't imagine how much fun it's going to be and what an adventure. And I idealize it in my head quite a bit. And I remember Geneva, looking back now, I can look back and go, that was amazing. And I loved it. And there was so many things that I loved about it. But I remember landing in Geneva, and the day we landed was like a Thursday at lunchtime. And the taxi drove us to our little apartment that we were going to be staying in. And it was dead. Like there was no one on the streets of Geneva. And that's Geneva. It's a very quiet place. It's not like some European city that's like hip and happening and, you know, this kind of thing. It's a very transient city. And it wasn't quite summer. So it was gray and dreary, and it almost like it set that mood. Like it was just like, oh my God, this is where we are. And then kind of not knowing anyone, and, you know, my husband kind of dealing with the stresses of work and being in this new environment and a new place and all of that. And he'd kind of bring these home, and then it would be me with this little one, also like a new time mum, first time mum, and we had just gotten married. So there was a lot of little things to get used to. And then bang, in this country where, you know, I couldn't just get my comfort foods or my comfort, like there's places in Melbourne that I go to when I'm feeling a bit, you know, off or whatever. So kind of there was a lot going on in that short space of time. Whereas, and some of those things that I learned from there. So coming to Singapore, I sent my husband here by himself for 2 months before we came. And I was like, you go there, you get into your job, get rid of all your stresses. So the time we come, it's a bit more relaxed for us, and we can focus on me and the boys getting used to it. Because I felt like with the first time that we went, it was very much about, oh my God, you're starting this new job. And what about you? And there wasn't time for me and my son to kind of go, oh my God, where are we? So that we kind of learned those kind of things, and kind of learned the whole, you know, deal with your stresses and let's try to make it different here.
That is a fabulous strategy. Like that
Yeah,
actually is a really practical strategy.
because the other thing that we did in Geneva, like we landed there and we got there a month before our container got there. And when our container got there, the idea was, again, because I had this little one who was quite a curious little thing, I was going to go back to South Africa, meet my parents there and have a nice little holiday. The container people were going to come. And because we'd moved with the company, they'd paid for the whole, like they'll unpack your container and da-da-da. And the day that they came was the work day for my husband. And after them dumping all the boxes, they started unpacking and about to put things away. And he went, no, sorry, I've got work. Just leave it. Off you go. And I was like, so me come back from this holiday, I've got, I think, and it was something ridiculous. Like we had 99 boxes to unpack or something like that. And so I've come with this little 6-year-old into this apartment that I hadn't even seen yet. Like we'd picked it. And like, I now have to unpack 99 boxes like by myself, basically, with this little. So again, this time around, I was like, you sit there and you watch them unpack everything. And I don't mind rearranging stuff when I get here, but everything needs to be unpacked. And I remember when I'd come to Geneva, he'd gone and bought the spec from IKEA and half did it. So when I came back with my 6 month, there's like screws everywhere. And like, I was like, everything needs to be done. So when I get there, it's not this big schmozzle of figuring things out. We can chillax and then just rearrange things into cupboards that we like. And so this time, Ryan, he did that.
I would have throttled him. I would have actually throttled him.
Close to it. So little things like that.
That is really, really practical advice. Yeah. Like that's gold. That is a gold nugget right there.
I've spoken to other people and some people are very much, we bring everything. Like another mum, I went into their house the other day and they've literally brought like furniture, like heavy, big furniture. And I was like, wow, you guys brought this. And, now if they do another move, they have to move all that again. So for me coming this time, I was determined not to bring a lot of stuff. And I still felt coming here, we brought too much stuff because now, and also this time, I thought we had done better because the last time with Geneva, we arrived and then found a place. And we had spoken to some other people there and what they had done was come to Geneva about a month or so before they were going to arrive and done like a week holiday there and found an area that they liked and did all that and then had the stuff. So when they arrived, they had their place. And I wanted to do it that way. But having said that, we came for like a 1-week recon mission before we came here to look at schools and look at apartments, but nothing was available when we came. So we had to go back kind of going, okay, that's the school we've kind of got an idea on and do the whole WhatsApp video tours with our agent. And now the place that we've gotten, now that we've lived in Singapore, it's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, but I would like a different area and like a different vibe. And it's only once you live somewhere. And also what we thought was really far away is actually quite close. And what we thought was close is actually quite far away. Just because of buses and all of that. So I would say one of my other things is don't bring much. Like in terms of furniture and pots and pans, unless it's something sentimental or whatnot. I think every country in the world has an IKEA now. So you can get the cheap kind of stuff. And it wasn't as if I brought anything that amazing that I mean, some of the stuff I brought is IKEA stuff. So if you can get rid of it, I really would say come with as little as possible. And so much of the stuff we've come with, like they sit in cupboards here and we like, what do we use them for? Even toys, like the kids use it as a time to get rid of every single toy. Because how often do you sit there and kind of go, like I've got 2 boys and we've got so much toys around that they don't look at and they don't even play with and I would love to get rid of all of it, but because we've kept it now and it gets harder to get rid of because you've got that little, hold on it.
The next move, you just get a skip bin. Just push it out the window into a skip bin.
Everything. Honestly, go with like a suitcase each and a box each of personal items, and that's it.
Wow, that is well. We tried a tiny house strategy, so we moved from a big farmhouse in Australia into a little place in Singapore, and we very much came with the mindset we're doing a tiny house experience. And so we bought very minimal stuff and topped it up with IKEA jobbies with things. And look, if you're after a designer house and you really like nice things and stuff, it doesn't work. But what we did do was bring artwork.
Yeah, right.
Nice and relatively flat to pack and relatively easy just to have a pack back up again for
you guys kind of thing.
Yeah. And so you can make something feel pretty good when you bring some artwork. I agree with you. Just don't bring much stuff.
Don't bring it
because it gives you an excuse to buy some really nice local things. That's how you get to then collect delicious pieces of furniture that might be something really beautiful from Thailand or from somewhere in Spain, or that you can do something really nice like that.
And get those, But I really think, like, especially, like, for example, I'm in my bedroom right now and I'm looking at the bed, and this is an IKEA bed. Why the hell did I bring it? Like, I could have bought that here. And even the boys' beds, like, and then the other huge thing is, and we experienced this in both Singapore and Geneva, so I don't know why I didn't learn my lesson. I thought I had, and I did measurements in Geneva before we brought our stuff to make sure things fit. But still, with the measurements, it's so much more of a pain to find a place that fits your things than to just be open and be allowed to find a place and then find things that fit in there. So in Geneva, so many of the apartments, we had to go, nope, sorry, our couch won't fit here. Nope, sorry, this won't fit here. Nope. And we actually had this huge pram, the great, which one was it? The Upa Baby Vista. I love that pram. It was sturdy and it was like, And there was apartments in Geneva that we kept going, I'm sorry, but our pram doesn't fit in the lift. And finally the agent was like, I think you need to think about getting a new pram. And it was like, okay. Like, we had to accept that it's a smaller country. So, doorways are smaller and aisles and it's similar with Singapore. Like, I've got a tiny little pram now. And to take that down some of the streets in Singapore, it's like, oh, man, like, So I really think bring less and enjoy what's local.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Great
advice. So tell me then, I'm going to change tact slightly.
Right.
Tell me then, what have been either similarities or differences for you arriving in two quite different cities?
Yeah.
But I say that also but Geneva and Singapore, it's so funny. If anyone has lived in either of those cities, you'll find there is an enormous crossover between the two. You meet so many people that have done either a stint in Geneva and end up in Singapore or vice versa. Like a dear girlfriend of mine, hello, Alice, I know you listen to this and you still need to be a guest on this podcast. She has been in Geneva for a long time. They did a 2-year stint in Singapore and then have gone back to Geneva.
Yeah, right.
It's a really interesting, like, just the two places seem to have a big crossover. Tell me some similarities and differences between your hitting the ground in those places. What did it look like, apart from the doom and gloom of the weather-wise and the zero social life in Geneva? What did it sort of look like social life-wise? How did you find the crowd? How did you sort of find those first few months in each of those places?
I kind of thought I would find Singapore more familiar, because so I am of Indian heritage and there's a big Indian community here in Singapore, and we actually have family here. But there's
also a big South African contingent here as well.
There is, which I have met a lot and gotten in touch with. But what I actually found now looking back and maybe this is more, I don't know how to explain it. For me, I feel it would be more my westernized upbringing, because like I said, we're Australian for all intents and purposes. In terms of what I'm looking for, and also both places I've entered as a mum with a little kid. In Geneva, it was 6-7 month old. In here, it's I entered with a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. But I'm someone who, the one thing I loved in Melbourne was the amount of things I could do with my kids, in terms of, you know, going to museums and there's always a play on. If the comedy festival's on, there's comedy shows for kids. I think I go to more comedy shows for kids than I do proper comedy shows. And then there's the food and wine festival, and there's something to go for kids. So the amount of things to do for kids is huge in Melbourne, I feel. When I hit Geneva, I was like, there's nothing to do for kids here. What am I doing? And I remember, like, I would complain, like, I can't do anything with my little boy here. I want to take him to things and I don't have things, and da da da. Where was I going with this? Yeah, I used to always complain about Geneva. And I remember one day, there's lots of parks there, and I remember, like, he would have been about 2 by this age, and we woke up one morning and I looked at him and was like, what do you want to do? And we both kind of looked at him and went, I guess we could go to a park. And we both kind of like had this huff and puff moment. But now, kind of looking at what there is to do in Singapore, while there are lots of things to do for kids, it's very different to what I expected. I expected Singapore to be really kid-friendly and really kind of like, I'll do this with him and I'll do that with him and we'll go here and we'll go there. I find it really hard here with a little kid in Singapore in terms of what to do. One, I think a big part of it plays on weather. So in terms of what to do, it's like I've got to find an indoor thing to do. And then the other big thing for me is the cost, because so many of the things to do in Melbourne were free. Or it was like a year-long membership and then free. Whereas here I kind of find it's a year-long membership with a discounted entry fee. Like, it's, you know, so it's getting my head around that. And it's funny, if I talk to a local Singaporean, they're like, there's so many things to do. And if I speak to an expat, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of feel similar to you. And now looking back at Geneva, even though we did have that huff and puff moment of, oh, okay, let's go to a park, but there was always a park to go to, and weather in which to go to a park. And dirt, I think that's something I really miss in Singapore, is the dirt. I walked my 2-year-old home from preschool today, and the first thing he did was picked up a stick, and he was just like knocking the poles as we walk, because I mean, it's a great sound, and what else do you do with a stick but knock poles as you walk along and make noises? And the number of people who are like, like, you know, because he was like hitting things, and he wasn't hitting it in a destructive way. But so those kind of things.
Hang on, was he wearing his yellow gumboots?
He was wearing his yellow gumboots and desperately trying to find puddles to step in, and he didn't. But he does love the fact that if he's in his, so now what I've done is, I mean, he's allowed to walk on the grass in any shoes, but I've kind of gone, well, you've got your gumboots on, you can walk on the grass today. And so for him, it's like, yeah, I got my gumboots on, I can walk on the grass. But yeah, so for me, I think that bit, I didn't realize how different it is here. I am a mum. Myself, I'm not a big fan of the outdoors. I like sitting in comfort and watching the outdoors. I don't like being in there. But my boys, they love it. They want sand under their nails, and they want to, I mean, he was very close to putting that stick in his mouth and having a good chew on it, and that's what they want to do. And I didn't realize, but Geneva had that, and a lot more. And I wonder if it's weather, and I wonder if it's, you know, Singapore really prides itself on how clean everything is, which is what I thought would be lovely coming here with a family. Like, yeah, everything's clean and safe and lovely.
But there's no mud.
Yeah, there's no dirt. There's no puddles to jump in.
Goddamn drainage working and efficient sewage systems. What?
He keeps, funnily enough, you mentioned that draining. He keeps looking into the drains and watches the water goes past with this like longing look.
I just want to get in that drain. Oh, goodness.
So those two things really surprised me and surprised me now that I look back at Geneva and go, wow, there was so much for us to do there. And we did do so much. And little things like I remember going to like a museum in Geneva where he could touch things. And here I went to the Children's Museum and they're not allowed to touch anything. Everything's like behind plastic. And, you know, it's because that's very much like the culture here. It's very clean and organized. And I didn't realize how westernized, if lack for a better, I don't know the description, we are, and ready to kind of touch and pull everything and like even the libraries in Australia, like you're allowed to go and be noisy in the kids section, whereas here you've got to be quiet, play with the toys delicately. And it's slowly a matter of finding those things that connect with us that that I didn't realize would be one, also fast spread. You need to be in those expatty areas for those things. Whereas I think that's a bit more the culture. Maybe I think my other bit of advice over that would be maybe prepare yourself for the differences a bit more. And be ready to kind of go, oh, okay, these differences, I didn't expect them, or this doesn't work for me, and then be ready to go and find other things. For me, it's been a little bit, this time round has been also just the heat here just kills me. So I'm a bit like, yeah, all right, I'll go find something in another day. But having said that, it's still been like also, I know I'm naming a lot of negative things here, but I still really love it. Like it's still exciting and it's still like, oh, let's go do this or let's go try that, or and maybe even preparing the kids for it. So yeah, but it's been interesting. I don't know. Did that answer your question? I don't even remember the question
I
you
can't
asked.
remember what my question was.
No, you're not going to
It's so interesting listening to you talk like that, because my kids are a bit older than, well, my little and your bigger in the same class, but I came with bigger kids, and I came with girls, and doing girls is very different, even though mine are farm girls and are quite used to being filthy at home. Doing girls in a city has been very different, because what you're saying about boys is I hear that from other friends with boys and stuff as well. So I don't know. I think it's been really interesting listening to when you do expat life in two very, very different places with an in-between break at home is really interesting, because you can look back with rose-colored glasses of that time away. You've gone home and reset, and then you come away again. I think is a really interesting. I'm going to do a little plug actually for this fabulous book that I'll put in the show notes, which if you haven't read, I highly recommend, which is a book by my new pal. Her name's Yvonne. God, I can't remember what Yvonne's last name is. Sorry, Yvonne. But it's called Whose Career? Yours, Mine, Ours. It's the most fabulous book. And that concept, she gives some really interesting strategies around how to do expat life with different strategies. And one of those is the taking it in turns. So, okay, we're going to go with your career this time and your career, my career next time. Or another one is this idea of, if you're going to stay with the main career with one person, is that going home in between and letting the spouse reset, reinvigorate, get back in and then go again is another really interesting strategy. So it's interesting listening to you and how that sort of worked for you guys. So
no, I don't know if it would have been different. I kind of, you were saying you find there's a lot of people with Geneva and Singapore. I don't find any huge similarities between them, apart from the fact that both of them are very transient cities. I find Geneva, there were so many people working there on like 1 year, 2 year contracts and out, because of the nature of all the head offices there. A lot of the stints are like 1 year, 2 years, and I think that's similar here. But other than that, I find them very different. Or maybe maybe the politeness. I don't know, but yeah, I find them quite different. I wonder if I'd try strike match similarity between them. You'll have to ask me when I leave Singapore and can look back.
Yeah. I'll wait till you've been at home for a little bit, and then I'll ask for
Yeah.
your rose-coloured glasses report on Singapore once you've left.
Exactly.
Well, look, it's been so interesting listening to that. Has taken a very different sort of route to how my conversations normally go, but I found it just super interesting, and really you've given some really, really practical advice that I think those are the sorts of things when, you can be told 10 times by different people, like, enjoy your time and you do you and you choose this and blah, blah. But they fail to say, find a condo first and then just get furniture that fits in it rather than knock back really great places because your bed's too big.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It was something that was like, oh, duh. It seems
But where you live really impacts your experience. And if your furniture and your attachment to your furniture determines where you live and what you can afford to live in, that then impacts that's a really interesting and important piece of advice. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I look forward to, maybe we need to report back in a few years when
I know. What was Singapore?
Review. We can do our homework listen to this episode, and we can review and see. But
yeah,
thank you so much for your time, my dear.
No worries. Thank you.